I have spent the last decade studying personal finance. I have my degree in finance. I'm a certified financial planner professional. And I've spent my entire career in wealth management, working with and managing money for the ultra wealthy. And in all of this work and this research, I've identified 5 core habits of the ultra wealthy that taught me how to build a multi six-figure net worth and be on track for millionaire status by age 34. So I'm going to run through those 5 core habits of the ultra wealthy in this video. Habit number 1 is buying assets. The key to building wealth is using your money to make more money. Most people use the money they make to buy things that lose value, but the ultra wealthy, they buy assets. Warren Buffett famously said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. And he's not being dramatic. If you can't find your way out of relying on your paycheck, you will always need to work. Your focus in your 20s should be on ownership. There is just no way to get to millionaire status young without it. The very best assets are going to continue to increase in value and create income for you. You can build wealth through stocks, companies, real estate investing, but focus on these one at a time. I personally started out owning stocks when I was an employee right out of college. I then graduated eventually to building a business. And then at some point, I will diversify through real estate. The point is, do not make other people rich with your money. Make yourself rich by using your money to buy assets. The second habit is to avoid bad debt. Now, the wealthy do not avoid debt completely, but they are smart with it. The key is to know the difference between good and bad debt and avoiding bad debt at all costs. The thing you need to become aware of is that companies do not want you to build wealth. They want you to use your money to buy their products, which makes them rich. And credit card companies, they aid this by offering you a way to continue to buy things even when you can no longer afford it. Now, on the other hand, good debt can be used to purchase things that increase your net worth and or your income. Things like student loans to get a good education, or using a loan to buy a business, or getting a mortgage for real estate investing. But be careful here, because even with good debt, debt can be a wealth enhancer, but debt can also be a wealth destroyer. If you over leverage yourself, which means taking on too much debt relative to your assets, one bad break could get you into serious financial trouble. So good debt is used to finance assets, while bad debt is used to purchase things that lose value. Those are things like cars, clothes, or any consumer goods. The wrong debt can delay financial freedom by decades. Again, you do not need to use debt to build wealth, but you do need to avoid the bad debt. Habit number 3 is control over your income. Find a job where the better you perform, the more you get paid. This is super important. Don't be afraid to take the lower paying job if it means you are in the driver's seat for your income, or if the knowledge you gain from the job will help you increase your income in the future. If you have the work ethic, it will be worth it. The best way to control your income is through things like sales positions, side hustles, and maybe eventually starting your own business. Now, I started out in a role without control over my income, but I was surrounded by mentors who were the top in their field. In the beginning, I took a job that prioritized education, so I'd have an edge earlier when I wanted to go to start my own business. Now, before we move on to the final 2 habits, I want to talk about the why behind building wealth. This may seem obvious, doesn't everyone want more money? But knowing your why, it could be the difference between you watching this video and implementing these habits versus you watching the video, getting a good dopamine hit, and then never implementing any of them. I remember personally years ago starting out on this wealth building journey, and I was at my mom's house and I had this stack of books. I had Millionaire Next Door and Psychology of Money, and I was visibly excited. And then my mom asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. Why? Why do you want to build wealth? You get all this money, and then what? And I balked at the question because, again, isn't it obvious? but the question didn't leave me. Simmering away in my subconscious, I couldn't give my mind a good, clear answer. Was it for status? Was it to retire early? How was I so drawn to this? And because I didn't have a good answer, I knew if I didn't figure it out that I wouldn't stick to it. So finally, today, after years of reflection and just plain growing up, the why that made me stick to these habits consistently over the past decade was actually really simple: ownership. Ownership over my time and my schedule so I could chase projects that interested me, and so I could afford to work from a mindset of maximum impact instead of maximum revenue. Not for status, not for a nice car, a nice house. I just wanted my time back. And this led me on a path to chasing a different status, work optional status, which led me here to making these videos and sharing everything that I know about how to get there. So if you want the same and you want to join me on the work optional journey, hit subscribe below and never miss a future video. Habit number 4 is investing as soon as possible. Now, one of my favorite books, The Psychology of Money, has this great little section in it that's talking about Warren Buffett. And he says, more than 2,000 books are dedicated to how Warren Buffett built his fortune, but few pay enough attention to the simplest fact. Buffett's fortune isn't due to just being a good investor, but being a good investor since he was literally a child. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. You want to be on the right side of compounding interest, and you want to get it working for you as soon as you possibly can, because compound interest works best the more time that you can give it. To illustrate this, I want to show you some numbers. Let's say you want to become a millionaire by 50 years old, and you start when you are 22, so you're starting really quickly. You'd have to save about $800 a month, assuming an 8% return annually. Now let's say you start at age 32, a full decade later, and you want to hit millionaire status again by age 50. Now you have to save $2,082 a month, again assuming that same 8% return. That's an extra $1,282 a month because you started 10 years later. Now, yes, I am a financial advisor, but I believe in investing in more than just the stock market. In fact, I believe the best investment you will ever make will be in yourself. A continuous investment into your own education and your skills should be the best return you will ever get. Now, the key is to start right away. The 5th and final habit is decreasing expenses. Your largest expenses outside of taxes are housing, transportation, and food, but most people obsess over trying to figure out how to cut out their daily latte. If you want to take a shovel rather than a teaspoon to decreasing your expenses, focus on the big ones: housing, transportation, and food. Because the difference between people who build massive amounts of wealth versus those who don't is that the wealthy save their energy and focus on the needle movers, things that will have the most impact. In my early 20s, I decreased and I kept my housing expense really low by always living with roommates and opting for cheaper neighborhoods. You could also house hack, which is owning a home and then renting out a room, or buying a duplex and renting out one of the units. You can decrease transportation expenses through living closer to where you work, taking public transportation when possible, and buying used cars. In my early 20s, I lived in a city that didn't require a car, so I took advantage of this by not owning one. The key to habit number 5 is to cut down and focus on these huge expenses. Keep them low, keep the income high, and invest the difference. Remember, building a significant wealth at a young age requires sacrifice. Process is actually pretty simple, but the execution is hard. Those are the 5 habits I'm using to become work optional. Let me know below if there's any that you are using that I didn't mention.